Humanity's hidden strength. In the far reaches of the galaxy, humanity had spread to dozens of star systems, establishing thriving colonies and outposts. Life was peaceful, with most humans unaware of the complex political dynamics at play on the galactic stage. On the bustling streets of New Terra, a young engineer named Lina Durand hurried to her job at Astrodynamics, one of humanity's leading tech firms. Little did she know that her groundbreaking work on quantum field manipulation would soon prove vital to the survival of her species. Light years away, on the bridge of the hidden human dreadnought Invictus, Admiral Ilara Vance studied the latest intelligence reports with a grave expression. The alien Galatian Empire was on the move, their massive war fleets consolidating along the border of human space. She had dedicated her life to preparing humanity's defenses, knowing that open conflict with the aggressive reptilian species was inevitable. The Invictus and its escort ships, all equipped with the latest iteration of Lina's quantum field technology, held position in the Oort cloud far beyond the system's edge. It was humanity's ace in the hole, a fleet of unimaginable power, hidden from prying eyes. If the Galatians made a move, humanity would be ready to strike back with everything they had. As life went on as normal for millions across human space, dark clouds gathered on the horizon. The Galatian Emperor Zorgax, from his grand palace on the imperial throne world, had deemed humanity a threat to be crushed under his armored heel. His orders rippled across the empire. Marshal the fleets, prepare for mass invasion. It was time to subjugate these petulant hairless apes and seize their worlds for the glory of the empire. In the shadows, the resistance was already stirring. Human spies and saboteurs in the heart of imperial space sent coded transmissions, smuggled blueprints of new Galatian weapons, all while evading the watchful eyes of the Emperor's spymasters. Each scrap of info found its way to the Invictus and Admiral Vance's strategic planning cell. As Zorgax's massive warships surged toward human space on plumes of atomic fire, Emperor and Engineer both were unaware that their paths would soon collide, with the fate of billions hanging in the balance. Aboard the Invictus, Admiral Vance watched the fleet deployment reports tick in and allowed herself a tight smile. "Let them come," she murmured. Humanity was ready for the fight of their lives. The Empire strikes. Emperor Zorgax lounged on his onyx command throne, his splayed claws tapping an impatient rhythm on the polished armrests. The view screens filling the grand chamber displayed a sea of warships stretching as far as the eye could see, the full might of the Galatian Imperial Navy. "We strike the humans within the hour," War Master Krovax announced, saluting the Emperor with the traditional clenched fist over his second heart. "Their outposts and colonies will fall, their ships will burn, and those who survive will kneel before the Imperial throne." "Good," Zorgax rumbled, his slitted eyes glowing with anticipation. "Leave none alive who do not submit. We will make an example of those who defy us." As one, the fleet leaped into hyperspace, an unstoppable tide of destruction racing toward the unsuspecting human worlds. On the peaceful colony of Verdant Haven, Specialist Maya Singh patrolled the lush fields surrounding the agro complex, her mind wandering. Just as she was contemplating what to have for dinner, alarms began blaring across the colony. Long-range sensors had detected incoming ships. Maya rushed back to the complex as civil defense teams hustled colonists to underground shelters. She barely made it to the command center before the first Galatian warships slid into orbit, their hulls glistening like polished onyx in the sunlight. "They're not responding to hails," Comtech Morgan shouted over the cacophony of alarms. "Energy spikes detected. They're firing." The command center's walls shuddered as the first salvo of Galatian plasma beams struck the colony's paltry defense grid. Consoles exploded in showers of sparks and arc lightning. Maya helped haul the injured Comtech to the evac shuttles. All around them, Verdant Haven burned under the onslaught. Similar scenes played out across a dozen human star systems as the Imperial fleet brought down the hammer. Outposts and colonies crumbled, defense fleets shattered. Aboard the Invictus, Admiral Vance watched the horrific carnage in grim silence, her fists clenched white knuckle-tight at her sides. It took every ounce of her willpower to keep the dreadnought in hiding, to not rush to the colony's defense. But she knew that to reveal the Invictus now would be suicide. They needed more time to prepare, to fully implement Lena's quantum field upgrades across the hidden fleet. So she watched, and she waited, even as millions perished and cities turned to ash. There would be a reckoning, she swore to whatever gods might be listening. Zorgax and his brutes would pay for every life snuffed out. A handful of human ships managed to slip through the carnage and escape into hyperspace. Civilian transports and scavenged military craft packed with shell-shocked survivors. They ran not knowing where they were headed, only that they had to escape the Empire's wrath. As these battered ships limped through the void, their reactors straining, they followed the tight beam navigation pulses toward a set of coordinates embedded deep in their nav cores. As blue lights flickered behind damaged panels and sparks gushed from severed ODN lines, the survivors on these vessels prayed this mysterious destination would offer salvation. Anything to escape this nightmare. Refuge and revelations. The Galactic fleet of human survivors emerged from hyperspace at the mysterious coordinates to find nothing. An empty expanse of space greeted them, distant stars twinkling coldly against the void. The nav pulses had led them to coordinates just past the Arcturus system, but there was no station, no planet, nothing to indicate why they'd been sent here. On the bridge of the refugee transport horizon, Captain Ravi Patel ran a weary hand over his face. His ship was on its last legs, reactor strained beyond capacity, hull buckling from the stress of their frantic escape. They hadn't been able to raise the UNSC on comms since fleeing the outer colonies. If help didn't arrive soon. "Sir, we're being hailed," Comtech Shuri called out, surprise evident in her voice. "It's on a UNSC priority channel." On screen, Ravi stood and faced the view screen. He wasn't sure what he expected to see, but it certainly wasn't the hardened face of a UNSC admiral. "This is Admiral Ilara Vance of the UNSC Invictus," the severe-looking woman said. "Transmitting security clearance now. Welcome to Sanctuary Station, Captain. You're safe now." As she spoke, the empty space before them shimmered and rippled, like a heat mirage on a summer highway. Ravi felt his jaw drop open as, impossibly, a massive space station materialized before them, gunmetal gray hull plates becoming solid as advanced cloaking tech dropped away. It was easily 5 times the size of any UNSC station Ravi had ever seen. Sanctuary Station served as a hidden refuge for military and civilian survivors of the Galatian onslaught. Ravi and the other refugees were welcomed aboard, given swift medical attention, hot food, and an opportunity to grieve and regroup. In a dimly lit conference room deep within the station, Admiral Vance gathered the captains and cell leaders. Her face was lined with exhaustion, but her eyes burned with determination. "What I'm about to tell you is the most closely guarded secret in the UNSC," she began, calling up a holographic display of the Invictus and its escort ships. "For years, we've been preparing for the possibility of a full-scale war with the Galatians. We've developed cutting-edge technologies and ships that, until now, have been kept completely hidden from the public eye." She explained how project leads like Lena Durand had pioneered incredible breakthroughs in quantum field manipulation, allowing human ships to achieve unheard-of performance and stealth capabilities. How the hidden human fleet had been outfitted with the most powerful weapons ever conceived by human science, all while maintaining ultimate secrecy. "The Galatians think they destroy our capacity to resist," Vance continued. "But the truth is, they've only seen a tiny fraction of what humanity is truly capable of. It's time we took the fight to them, hit them back for every atrocity, and make them realize the tragic depth of their mistake. We've been preparing for this day, dreading it but knowing it would come. Now it's here. Now it's time to unleash mankind's full fury. Now we strike back." The room erupted into frenzied conversation as the survivors began to realize what this all meant. Humanity wasn't on the brink of extinction, but on the cusp of launching its most crucial campaign. A desperate plan began to take shape, one that would take the battle to the very heart of the Galatian Empire. It was bold, it was daring, and it was the best chance they had to turn the tide. In the engineering bays many decks below, Lena Durant pored over the schematics of the quantum field generators, searching for any possible refinements or optimizations. They'd need every advantage, every scrap of power and performance from these systems if they were going to pull this off. She refused to let her breakthrough be used for death and destruction, but she could hardly deny the grim necessity of what they were planning. If this is what it took to save humanity, to save the dream of a peaceful future, then she would do whatever was necessary. Taking the fight to the Empire, the hidden human fleet knifed through hyperspace, Admiral Vance, standing resolute on the bridge of the Invictus, spread out before the viewports, was the most powerful assemblage of human warships ever gathered. Dreadnoughts, battlecruisers, carriers, and more, all outfitted with Dr. Durant's quantum field tech and armed to the teeth with the most advanced weapons human science could devise. Their target, a key Galatian naval base and shipyard orbiting the red giant star Antares. Taking out this stronghold would cripple the Empire's ability to resupply and repair its fleets on the front lines. More than that, it would send an unmistakable message. Humanity was done being the victim. As the fleet dropped out of hyperspace on the edge of the Antares system, the quantum field generators hummed to life. The ships shimmered and vanished from conventional sensors, only the barest gravitic anomalies hinting at their presence. Meanwhile, a flight of stealth recon drones shot ahead, skimming dangerously close to the Galatian outpost to gather last-minute intelligence. In the Invictus's CIC, Admiral Vance and her staff watched the telemetry with hawkish gazes, looking for any deviation from their painstakingly crafted battle plan. On the Galatian base, Overseer Zilak was just settling into his daily routine, confident in the outpost's heavy defenses and the swarm of warships standing guard. The hairless apes had been quiet since the glorious Imperial victory, no doubt quivering in fear in whatever bolt holes they'd scattered to. His mandibles click-clacked in amusement at the thought. His complacence vanished as alarms suddenly howled through the command center. "Report," he snarled, spinning to face the sensor station. Multiple hyperspace reversions at the system's edge. The operator reported, their scales pale with shock. "It's the humans. At least 30 capital ships end." The operator's words were drowned out by a teeth-rattling boom as the first salvo of human quantum torpedoes struck the base's shields, sending spider-webbed cracks arsing through their shimmering protective envelope. Zilak's tail lashed in anger and disbelief as more human ships appeared, their angular hulls a stark contrast to the organic curves of Galatian design. How had they hidden their approach? The precision of their ambush spoke to inside knowledge of the outpost's defenses. They must have spies within the Empire. The battle raged, human dreadnoughts dueling their Galatian counterparts while flights of nimble destroyers harried the enemy flanks. Admiral Vance directed the chaos with the precision of a master conductor, wielding her ships like instruments in a lethal orchestra. But the Galatians were far from defeated. Though caught by surprise, Overseer Zilak rallied his forces and struck back with the ruthless aggression characteristic of his species. Plasma beams and gravitic missiles crisscrossed the void as ships fought and died under the baleful red glare of Antares. The battle stretched on for desperate hours, the tide seesawing back and forth. The humans fought with a ferocity born of desperation and righteous fury, knowing this was their chance to strike a blow against the Empire's smug superiority. Imperial ships fought with the clockwork coordination of a well-oiled machine and the smug arrogance of a force sure of its own invincibility. At last, with a final flurry of quantum torpedoes, the Galatian battle line crumbled and fell back toward the planet, their hulls trailing atmosphere and debris. The human forces, battered but unbowed, regrouped around the Invictus while strike teams raced to secure the orbitals. Admiral Vance allowed herself a tight smile. Letting out a breath, it felt like she'd been holding the entire battle. They'd struck a blow today, shown the galaxy that humanity would not go quietly into the night. But this was only the beginning. By revealing their hidden fleet, by taking this aggressive action, they'd truly kick the hornet's nest. The road ahead would be long and bloody, with no guarantee of ultimate victory. But as she looked out at the ships under her command, human vessels alongside those of the non-human allies they'd gained in secret over the years, she felt a new ember of hope take light in her heart. Zorgax would hunt them to the ends of the universe after this brazen attack, there was no doubt. The Empire would lash out in rage and pain, seeking to crush this impudent uprising. Let them, Vance thought with cold determination. We're just getting started. Today Antares, tomorrow, the galaxy. Desperate gambit. The aftermath of the Antares raid sent shockwaves rippling through the galaxy. For the first time in living memory, the Galatian Empire had been dealt a serious blow, one of their key strategic bases reduced to a ruined husk. More jarring still was the revelation that humanity, so recently on the brink of total defeat, possessed warships and weapons that could challenge Imperial might head-on. The Emperor's rage was apocalyptic. Zorgax ordered massive fleet redeployments to hunt down and exterminate every last trace of human resistance. Bounties were placed on the heads of Admiral Vance and other key UNSC leaders. The full might of the Empire reoriented itself toward one overriding goal: humanity's complete and total annihilation. In the months that followed, the Shadow War escalated to a frenzy pitch. The human fleet launched daring raids and ambushes, using their quantum field tech to strike without warning before slipping away. Galatian battle groups scoured the stars, increasingly frustrated by their inability to bring the rebels to heel. But as the human victory tally mounted, so too did the costs of the campaign. Ships limped back to Sanctuary Station, riddled with plasma scorches and leaking atmosphere, crews hollow-eyed and heartsick from the constant fighting and loss. Admiral Vance knew they couldn't sustain this pace forever. For every Imperial ship they destroyed, it seemed like 3 more took its place. Humanity was still hideously outgunned and outmatched. If the President and other surviving elements of legitimate government were ever going to come out of hiding and reestablish control, something truly decisive needed to happen. Their opportunity came in the form of a desperate transmission from a human spy deep within Imperial space. The Emperor himself was due to make a rare appearance at the Empire's most important warship production nexus in the Sirius system. His absence from the capital world of Kalatos and the massive security breach required to travel there presented a once-in-a-lifetime opportunity to strike at the heart of Galatian power. The plan Admiral Vance and her staff devised was as daring as it was desperate. A small team, led by Lina Durant herself, would infiltrate the facility days before the Emperor's arrival. Their objective: to upload a quantum eye virus into the facility's systems, one that would lie dormant until triggered by the Emperor's access codes. Once active, it would overwrite security protocols and leave the entire facility vulnerable to the waiting human fleet. It was a near-suicidal mission. If any part of the plan went awry, if they were detected, the Emperor would slip through their grasp, and the facility's defenses would tear the human ships. Turning the tide. The stealth shuttle ferrying Lina Durand and her infiltration team knifed through the Sirius system, racing toward the immense Galatian shipyard that hung in orbit above the system's gleaming blue star. This close, the scale of the facility was staggering. A metal moon bristling with construction gantries, assembly lines, and swarming defense platforms. Lina checked her gear for the 100th time, her heart hammering against her ribs. The quantum AI nestled in the data chip in her breast pocket represented years of her life's work, a project she'd begun developing as a purely theoretical exercise. She never imagined it would be deployed as a weapon in the battle for humanity's very survival. The shuttle shuddered as it slipped through the defense grid, its quantum field rendering it all but invisible to the Galatian sensors. As they glided into the cavernous landing bay, Lina and her team tensed, waiting to be detected for alarms to blare and plasma beams to reduce their craft to glowing slag. But the bay remained still, the Calatian soldiers and technicians going about their duties with no idea of the wolf in their midst. Lena and her team slipped out into the controlled chaos of the shipyard's innards. The gambit was only beginning. Light hours away, the human fleet lay in wait, 1,000 ships running dark and silent. The Invictus hung at the heart of the formation, Admiral Vance pacing the bridge as the clock ticked down. Everything hinged on Lena's team planting the virus to disable the facility's defenses prior to the Emperor's arrival. If they failed, this massed fleet would fly into the maw of the fully armed Calatian defenses. It would be a slaughter. On board the construction nexus, Lena and her team fought their way through layer after layer of security, both virtual and physical. There were a few terrifyingly close calls, moments where it seemed their intrusion was detected, but each time they managed to slip away, leaving a trail of twitching Calatian bodies and slagged sentry turrets in their wake. At last, they'd reached the primary network core. As Lena slotted the AI virus chip home, she felt a rush of elation. Against all odds, they'd done it. Now it was up to the fleet too. Alarms shrieked as the chamber sealed itself and sentry turrets dropped from the ceiling. They were trapped. Calatian troops flooded in, the snap hiss of plasma rifles charging filling the air. In the chaos, Lena realized with cold dread that the virus had been detected somehow isolated before it could fully embed itself. The fleet was heading into a trap. She keyed her comlink, screaming for the Invictus to abort the attack, but it was too late. In orbit, the Calatian defenses lit up with malicious glee as the human ships dropped out of hyperspace, exactly as planned. Even as plasma beams and missiles began to savage the onrushing human fleet, the Emperor's personal warship entered orbit. On the bridge, Zorgax's mandibles split in cruel laughter, his obsidian eyes glittering with triumph. He'd known of the human plan all along, allowed them to believe their spy was true, in order to lure the rebel fleet into a final devastating ambush. The battle was short and brutal. Despite all their advanced technology, all their desperate valor, the human ships were outmatched 10-1. The Invictus shuddered and burned under concentrated Calatian fire, atmosphere gushing from gaping wounds in its hull. A final salvo of quantum torpedoes poured through the Emperor's warship, but they detonated harmlessly against its intensely reinforced shields. As the last human ship exploded into a bloom of nuclear fire, Zorgax stood from his command throne, satisfaction thrilling through his veins. This was the moment of his ultimate victory, the final eradication of the human threat. He would be hailed as a hero, the savior of. His exultant thoughts stuttered to a halt as a flashing alert lit his command console. There, in the burning ruins of the human fleet, a massive energy signature bloomed, quantum forces swirling in an unnatural maelstrom. Zorgax felt his victory turning to ash in his mouth as he realized that all of this, had been part of the human's plan. The detonation of the Invictus's overloaded quantum core unleashed an apocalyptic blast of exotic energies, a roaring wave of destruction that engulfed the Emperor's ship and the entire Sirius construction nexus in a heartbeat. When the maelstrom cleared, nothing remained of the proud Imperial ships and facilities, but an expanding cloud of molecular dust. Across Imperial space, in the raging heart of every major battle, the human ships began to glow with the same deadly energies. As one, they went nova, dragging the massed Imperial fleets into oblivion with them. The Empire, so fixated on this obvious threat, never saw the hundreds of civilian transports jumping to the Empire's core worlds, each bearing a dozen antimatter bombs ready to incinerate Calatian industry, leadership, and morale in unstoppable cataclysmic strikes. Lena Duran stood in her cell, bruised but triumphant, as she watched the shipyard crumble around the horrified Calatian guards. The quantum eye had been a decoy, a final misdirection to lure the Empire into gathering its strength to crush the human fleet. The real killing blow had been 100 sacrifices, brave humans on suicide missions to deliver oblivion to the enemy wherever it was weakest. As the Empire reeled under the onslaught, The remnants of the human government emerged from hiding to rally the surviving colonies. Admiral Vance's sacrifice had bought them a chance, however slim, to chart a new course. The war was far from over, but now, at last, there was a flicker of hope. Humanity had looked into the abyss, refused to blink, and unleashed the unfathomable to survive. In this moment of cataclysm and rebirth, the true strength and indomitable will of humanity shone through. Though billions had died and entire worlds burned, we remained unbowed. The Empire had learned the true cost of pushing humanity to the brink. Out there, in the stars, the fight would continue. But now the galaxy would learn to fear mankind's wrath and respect its unyielding spirit. Now, all knew the lengths we would go to when our home and our existence was threatened. The tide had turned, the board was reset. Come what may, humanity would never again be victims. We would rise from the ashes of our fallen, take our place on the galactic stage, and let our story echo through eternity. The Galatian Empire had started this war, but by all the gods and stars, humanity would finish it. The end.